What is it from your story that you would say to Governor DeWine, who says that parents should have this right? If they agree to it, they should be able to help their child do this experimental transition to another gender.
Conservatives are losing a lot of options as to what to conserve.
Well, parents don't have a right to abuse their children.
We are there to protect liberty, defend the Constitution, and stay within that small rules.
We had a Zoom call just a few days before the decision was made.
President Trump says about Mike DeWine, he has fallen to the radical left. No wonder he gets loudly booed in Ohio every time I introduce him at rallies.
And that I was 15 when my breasts were surgically removed.
Were you in Vandalia? I was so embarrassed for Governor DeWine when he introduced him, and everybody was booing, and I'm like, whoa, and then they introduced.
He was visibly disturbed. He knows just how horrific this is.
Transgender boys being able to shower with Mike DeWine's granddaughters
is not just a matter of pure incompetence or ignorance. Competence or ignorance. Competence or ignorance.
Well, hey, everybody, it's Everett with Ohio for Freedom. Happy New Year, first program of the year. And we got slammed with a big slap in the face, a major surprise. Mike DeWine vetoes a very sensible, ordinary piece of legislation. It's a shocker. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get.
I hear the sweet sound of freedom, and I won't be long.
Well, I can't remember if it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, but right about that time we heard I saw the news story rather, that our esteemed governor, Mike DeWine, decided to veto a very common sense bill that would ban transgender boys, testosterone confused boys, from competing on girls' sports, ostensibly being able to shower with Mike DeWine's granddaughters. But he didn't think that was a good idea. Evidently, he's for all of those things. And then we found out, because people paid attention, and they connected the dots, that Mike DeWine had received over $40,000 from the transgender industrial complex and from the hospital and Big Pharma. And so that was no surprise. So here to help us talk about it is one of the co-sponsors of House Bill 68. She is the state representative in Ohio for the 45th district, and she happens to be my rep. Representative Jennifer Gross joins us now, and she's joining us by audio. Jennifer, thank you very much for making the time to speak with us today.
Absolutely, Everett, and thank you for reaching out to me today, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Sorry that we had the problems with the video. I'm going to search for the absolute most flattering photo. It won't be very difficult because you're so photogenic, but that's, I'm being silly here. Jennifer, before we go too much farther, pardon me, I want to jump right into this, but believe it or not, we get a lot of shadow batting and a lot of censoring on the various platforms that we're on, especially Mark Zuckerberg's platform, but we still reach all over the country and various parts of the world. So would you mind taking just a minute to kind of introduce yourself and your background, your credentials, and just introduce yourself to everybody? Would that be okay?
Absolutely, Everett. Thank you so much. So I never intended to run for office. 3 years ago or 4 years ago, some women came to me and said, would you run for office? And I said, no. So here I am talking to you today, right? Yep. I am a 21-year Air Force retired lieutenant colonel. I have some combat time. I was a flight nurse in Saudi Arabia, Sarajevo. After that, I sold, don't hate me for this, but I was managed a $3 million territory for Eli Lilly. Okay. And was top 2% in the nation for that, and then used my GI Bill to become a nurse practitioner. Graduated from the University of Cincinnati with honors at UC. I'm very proud UC alum. And from there, I have practiced since 2004. I was also part of Operation Warp Speed. Again, don't hold that against me at the time. We
Yeah.
thought that warp speed was the way to go. And I was a sub-investigator in clinical research. So just finished up a contract that I was on recently. And in the meantime, I am your state rep, and it's my honor to serve you. It's really a great honor to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And as you might recall, our military commission says, or our military oath says, against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And in these times when we're fighting against massive immigration over the border, I just heard yesterday that the president is planning to open up 4 closed entry points in the southern border, when December we had a record number of undocumented people coming over the border. Again, for people seeking religious asylum and asylum for safety, that's one thing, but for a better life, we know we have a better life. And for that, we must control the southern border. So,
yeah. So basically, you have a completely lackluster resume. You know nothing about medical science or anything, but you're still on here talking about stuff. So we give you no. I want to say sincerely, I'm a little bit older than you, but President Carter never inspired me to join the military, and I never miss an opportunity to say thank you for your service, and I mean that sincerely.
Oh, thank you, Everett. Honestly, it's easier to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces and in a combat zone than the state legislature.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's dive into this. And listen, we want to hear from you, and you can take our conversation in the direction that you feel is most appropriate or necessary. But I did want to begin with this question. The legislative process, I heard from another interview that this bill took 2 or 3 years perhaps to work through. But is there anything about the legislative process itself that would cause it to be necessary for Mike DeWiне to do what he did right around New Year's? Or do you think that he thought that he could, in a slow news cycle period of time, get that done and nobody would notice?
It's really, if he did it to try to make sure nobody noticed, he really failed at that, because it is, it is absolute. I mean, Megyn Kelly's talking about it. There's an article by the National Review that says to err is DeWiine. He failed miserably if flying under the radar was his plan. I think, honestly, Everett, although I hope someday you come to my town hall, since you're one of my constituents.
Yes.
I think he has completely lost touch with the majority of Ohioans who really genuinely believe that though medical decisions are for parents, that removing penises and breasts are inappropriate when advised, when it's irreversible damage. And all this bill did was prevent that from happening until after the age of 18, which a lot of detransitioners say is even too soon for that either. So what was he thinking? Why did he do it then? He was required, because we passed it. Our law requires that the governor either sign or let go into law any legislation we pass within 10 working days or government days of it being passed. So our timing of passage required him to make a decision. He made that decision on the last possible of the 10 days.
I gotcha. Well, you kind of touched on something that I was going to get to. Listen, Chloe Cole did an interview on Fox News. If I can, I'm going to play I've got 2 clips. They're each about 30 seconds. But if I can play this first one, I'd like for us to comment on it. And here we go.
No, what is it from your story that you would say to Governor DeWiine, who says that parents should have this right? If they agree to it, they should be able to help their child do this experimental transition to another gender.
Well, parents don't have a right to abuse their children. This is no different from any form of abuse. This is the sterilization and mutilation of thousands of children happening within the state. that he is being entirely complicit in. He has made the choice to continue this.
There you go. What's just your reaction when you hear this young lady utter those words?
First ever, I've met Chloe, and she is so delightful. She's so
beautiful.
Genuine
Yeah.
about her story and how her parents just trusted the medical system, and she was basically quickly put through the system as a child. We would prevent a parent from mutilating a child's penis per se.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry to be blunt.
We don't have any choice. It's okay.
Right. But we would prevent a child from abusing being abused by a parent if they were abusing a child's genitals. And yet,
Right.
if the medical system completes that abuse and is complicit, then it's no longer abuse. I think the adults in the room need to stand up and say, gender identity dysphoric disorder, gender identity disorder, they exist. It is a terrible, tragic situation. But we have multiple medical professionals in the United States, whether it is in the movie What is a Woman from
Yep.
Matt Walsh, I believe, and from detransitioners like Chloe herself, numerous other people who have spoken about when they were told they were going to be given a surgically created female genitalia, that it never has looked normal. It is actually at the very least, it's false marketing. I mean, it is a snow job and a sham that someone can say you're going to have a functioning male body part when you don't have the genetic makeup. An XX is an XX and an XY is an XY. And as a previous tomboy, I can only imagine if my baseball coach, and I played All-Stars, my baseball coach had said, do you think you're a boy? I think you're a boy. We had an in-ground pool. When I was in 5th grade, my parents said, you need to start wearing a top. I said, no, I don't have any need to wear a top. The boys don't have to. If my mother had said, do you think you're a boy? I think you might be a boy. I think we need to take you into school. And then my teachers were like, you know what? You're a tomboy. You like to play baseball. You don't like to wear a shirt at the pool. And they were a role model for me. What kind of suggestive counseling? And I'm not saying in general people do this because I think it's very rare.
Yeah.
But what happens to a child who's looking for adult guidance and shepherding, flag waving through a very difficult, not everybody struggles with puberty. I didn't.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't, at 5th grade, I was just still a little girl. Yeah. But still, what happens when adults say to a child, I think you're confused. Do you think you'd like to be a boy? Or a mother at 2 years of age starts dressing her son in girls' clothes, or even at 6 years old?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I first became aware of Chloe because I saw a lengthy interview that she did with Jordan Peterson. And the reason that I mentioned that is my takeaway from that was she didn't go into the process like automatically convinced that she needed to be transitioned. And Jordan Peterson went through, I think he did as much talking as Chloe did, but it was good because he explained that like at least a year or more process of even coming to some kind of a diagnosis or a conclusion. But that's not what happened with her at all, is it?
It isn't. And I believe when I saw her, she had all of her breast tissue removed, and she talks about at her age, I believe she's 21, 22 now or so. And she talks about having medical issues that are like postmenopausal women. And her realizing it, what really struck her in her testimony, at least to me, was that she was holding a baby and she realized she would never breastfeed a baby. And when you watch her, you can see the actual very real palpable pain in her eyes and in her face. Yeah. I'm so thankful that she has found who she really is today and that she has a strong, supportive community surrounding her now.
She's very inspirational. Okay, so I'm going to play, and it's the last one. It's the second clip because honestly, it almost shocked me when I learned this piece of information from Chloe. Here we go.
just a few days before the decision was made. And when I was describing every step of the treatment, and especially when I brought up how young I was during every step, having been 13 when my puberty was suppressed, when I was put on androgens, and that I was 15 when my breasts were surgically removed, he was visibly disturbed. He knows just how horrific this is to do to children. His decision to continue this to happen to thousands of families within the state is not just a matter of pure incompetence or ignorance.
Okay, so that Mike DeWine was on a Zoom call with this completely credible, traumatized but getting over it young lady. I mean, were you aware of that Mike DeWine literally was on a Zoom call with Chloe Cole and he still made the decision that he made?
I wasn't. But I would, being the executive over a state of 11.9 million Ohioans,
Yeah.
I would expect that a man like Governor DeWine would do due diligence and understand that even after all of these procedures, our gender identity, gender dysphoric disorder individuals still are at extreme, some say upwards of 4 times to 40 times the risk of suicide, even after all of these treatments. I can only believe that he has some other reason. And I'm not even convinced, Everett, that it's $40,300.
Right.
I believe it's something even more. There's something more behind that. He has 9 children and multiple grandchildren. And
Right.
this is a legacy he's chosen to leave, like you said in your introduction. So we're going to have, and I'm going to say something, and I apologize, I got this from my husband, but so we're going to have 13, 14-year-old girls who are swimming at the Y, and they're going to be getting their swimsuit on, and then they're going to have a man there with his Franks and Beans hanging out. I mean, like he wants that. He is okay with his wife being in a public facility and a 6'2" man dressed as a woman in a private bathroom when it's just his wife and him in the bathroom. I find it out of touch.
The motivation's got to be more than $40,000, doesn't it?
Correct. But what is it? He didn't tell us in his formal response to the veto. But it has to be. I think that's what I'd like your viewers to really understand about politics. Remember that I'm a novice in this is political showmanship. And I hope I'm never, as your representative, I hope I'm never like that. But there's gotta be, I want people to look at this and go, okay, what is the real reason? Does he have a transgender person in his life? Does he wish that he was a woman? Does he, I mean, whatever it is that the truth always is the best thing to explain, or is it even more sinister than that? Is there something, behind it? I don't know. All I can say, it's all conspiracy if I go farther than that. But, what makes a governor? Some people say DeWine is the most politically connected politician in the nation, above McConnell, above any staunch conservative like Matt Gaetz, and even the Speaker of the United States House. It's really curious.
It is curious, and I understand not wanting to engage in conspiracy. If I can just list a little bit of fact, though, Mike DeWine has a long history of what I am going to call, without apology, medical atrocity. I'll go all the way back to Reinstate and Dayton Women's Med Clinic when it had worked its way through the court, and it wasn't shut down for ideological reasons. It was shut down for transport violations and all sorts of medical violations. And yet, with the stroke of a pen, of course, he's acting through his sycophant Amy Acton. And so on the subject of Amy Acton, I'm sorry, Mandate Mike, but the masks were not real. The 6-foot distancing wasn't real. The $5 million or $10 million lottery. Jennifer, I want to give you the floor, but see, here's the thing. I don't forget the fact that I was let go from at least I think it was 2, but I know that it was 1 job during that lockdown because they found out I was not going to take their vaccine. And I'm fortunate because I didn't lose an elderly loved one due to neglect in a nursing home.
That's right. That's right. And let me remind you that I'm usually very tactful. I'll attack people's policy. But on one thing I did attack DEWINE, and he said, and this is what really got me, the mask is a symbol of freedom. And I would encourage you, we're working on a mask amendment to the Constitution, or a mandate, for masks. And I hopefully would love for you to get Mr. Petty, who's an Ohio expert on mask effectiveness. But you're absolutely right. I mean, mandate, Mike, and also want to encourage you to watch the movie Ineffective, or Unsafe and Ineffective. Just came out recently.
I like it already.
Yep. I'm proud of you. I am proud of you. If you only knew the hundreds of thousands of emails that I got to my office when I sponsored HB 248 to prevent mandates, and the testimony that I was removed from health committee. I don't know if you know that. Yep. So I was removed from health committee. Yep. That 319 conscientious right to refuse is our bill that will prevent, it gives you a conscientious objection to any genetic therapy, gene therapy, or vaccines. And that's all vaccines now. I think that after COVID, I think that we have earned the privilege to say any medical treatment you should not be required to get. But it also is a religious exemption. You cannot force a medical treatment when someone has a religious exemption, understanding that a large majority of these vaccines were through phase 1, clinical phase 1, 2. They utilize fetal cell lines, stem cell lines.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, digress.
No, you're not digressing at all. I could reach another 2 feet right there and put my hands on a backup supply of ivermectin.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell anybody that I'm not a medical practitioner, but I will say that it is unconscionable that people have not been free to pursue the remedies that they feel is best for them. And I'll just leave it right there.
Well, my HB 73 that's already passed the House protects that relationship between you and your provider, and allows your physician, it is only physicians, not physician extenders like nurse practitioners like myself and PAs. But for this bill, it protects that sacred relationship between a physician, the artist physician, and his patient, and says, or her patient, and says, I believe this may work for you. Or the patient says, I want to try this. And the doctor says, okay, it's not dangerous for you, and I don't believe it will harm you, so I will help you. But if you're in the hospital and the hospital or the providers there refuse to do it, but you have a physician outside of the hospital who says, I'm willing to take the risk and come in and treat this patient with temporary hospital privileges, I will come in and do that. And this preserves the patient's choice, but also allows physicians who are willing to look outside, like the McCulloughs of the world, like the Bhattacharya's of the world. I will say that after I was part of Operation Warp Speed and did the research on monoclonal antibodies and a couple of the vaccines, and at the time, I want you to know I was very much an advocate for vaccines, very much a pro, what I call vaccine zealot. Like, you would have never convinced me anything negative about vaccines. I'm an indoctrinated nurse practitioner.
Right.
But I worked for a company, a telemedicine company, and I don't anymore. Let's be really clear. But that company used the FLCCC protocols. And so when you look at those protocols, you understand that hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, all of those things. If I could tell you the number of California residents, Washington residents that would call in and they would make up these outlandish stories because they were not allowed to get ivermectin. And my company allowed it to be prescribed.
Yeah, but and even closer to home, I believe her name was Julie Smith. That happens to be the name of my very first girlfriend, but it was a different Julie Smith. But in Westchester Hospital, lost her husband, and we don't know how it would have turned out, but we do know that a Hamilton County judge, wasn't it, stepped in and would not allow her husband to be treated with the medication that they wanted to use. So this hits pretty close to home.
It was actually a Butler County judge. It was Judge Oster.
Okay.
But Julie was my constituent at the time, so I'm very familiar. And she and I have been friends for over 10 years. And we get together as a group of women and play bunco every month, and we've done that for 7 years. So I know her extremely well. Nobody knew that during the time. I had to stay sort of outside because at the time I was also fighting 248. But Julie was the one who said to me, ivermectin. And I'm like, whoa, that's a little bridge too far for me. I mean, my evolution as a clinician, my evolution, what I like to tell everybody, and I want your listeners to understand, is that I was a vaccine zealot when all this started. So if I can come to where I am today, like if I went to India, I'd probably still get a typhoid shot. It's 33% deadly. I don't know. I haven't done the research. But what I want you to know is if I can change as a clinician, so can your family, so can your doctor, so can your nurse practitioner and PA. We can change. We're able. And if my eyes can be open, so can other people. So yes. And so, and I'm also going to see Julie tomorrow, by the way. So.
Well, give her our best and our love, and that one really, that one really hit close to home because it's right here in our county, and sorry, stream of consciousness, but just also to add to the Mike DeWine mystery motivation. He was also, I believe, one of the legislators that signed, if I remember correctly, pretty close to like Christmas Eve midnight, for the whole PrEP Act thing, the thing that gave all the pharmaceutical industry all this blanket immunity. So there's back in
the 80s. Was that in the 80s?
I don't know if he was involved in Bidol, and maybe I'm getting them confused. But there was Bidol, but there was also this most recent version of the PrEP Act that gave all this immunity. I believe I probably got it on this other computer. But see, here's the thing: you mentioned this change of I'll say evolution of understanding or whatever. But the thing is, you learn so much. You can't recall everything instantaneously because the information warfare has been so intense.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. I was dramatically changed by what I call several planting of seeds. One of them is a case here in Ohio, Haley Golden and the Goldens, whose daughter Haley passed away 2 years after she got a meningitis vaccine. She started having seizures 2 weeks after she got the shot. She was going to go to UC, and then she died 2 years later of a seizure. She had never had a history of seizures, never had seizures before in her life. And so it was all those little seeds that were planted. My aide at the time also got seizures after one of her vaccines. And I'm like, whoa, and so did her brother. And I'm like, you got to remember, I was in a pro-vaccine land of, if you got your shots, you're healthy. Are you sleeping right? Are you eating right? Are you exercising? Right. All that. I never would have asked you. I never would have questioned vaccines ever. So 3 years later, here we are. And, but back to DeWine,
yes.
DeWine, I was really mad at him initially, not in this past week, but I mean, I am disappointed in him this week, but early on as a solid, staunch, fierce fighting conservative, I tried really hard to give him the benefit of the doubt and considered him an older gentleman who has decided that he needs to be our papa. He needs to be our grandpa, and that he believes the role of government is to keep us safe and to pass laws such as, instead of making distracted driving a secondary offense, he needs to make it a first offense, that he needs to protect us from ourselves, which annoys me. Because our job as government is not to get in your life. It is to helpfully put limited guardrails in society. It is to get out of your life. It is to push back government. As Warren Davidson, our congressman, just said, conservatives are losing a lot of options as to what to conserve because government has grown so big. But he believes, I think, that he is chosen to be our father. That is a human law type of legislation. I believe in originalist intent of government. And that means we are there to to protect liberty, defend the Constitution, and stay within that small role, smaller in the U.S. Constitution than Ohio. Ohio is 5 times bigger than the federal Constitution. And that's why it needs to change. But anyway, I think that DeWine thinks that he needs to save us from ourselves. And I already have a savior, and he's not it.
Yeah, very well said. Well, Jennifer, we're gonna run at the end of the clock here before too long. I'm not in a hurry, but here I do want to ask 2 different things. And one is, okay, what can we do? Hey, I want to go back to this real quick. Put that back. Oh, it is on there. I want to show this. President Trump says about Mike DeWine, he has fallen to the radical left. No wonder he gets loudly booed in Ohio every time I introduce him at rallies. But I won't be introducing him anymore. Legislature will hopefully overturn the veto. Do it fast. That's President Trump's message to you guys. How do you respond?
Were you in Vandalia? I was so embarrassed for Governor DeWine when he introduced him, and everybody was booing, and I'm like, whoa! And then they introduced Warren Davidson,
booing remotely, but I was booing.
Right, and Jim Jordan is introduced, and Warren Davidson are introduced, and they're getting whoa, and then they introduced DeWine. It's like boo! It's like, oh, how embarrassing! Right. But you know, I believe we're going into a special session next week. I suspect that is our business of the day, since it was an as needed session, and now it's being called a needed session. So I believe that is our main purpose next week. And but that remains to be seen. I don't want to have a bunch of protesters there until we know that what's going on. I really don't want a bunch of protesters anyway, but it is the people's house. They're allowed to come. I'd also like to remind you that it does take 60 votes. So all of your I know what that is. Yeah. And I want to remind your listeners that it takes 60 votes to override a veto in a House of 99. That's 2/3 majority. So they should be emailing their legislators. I am the Westchester, Fairfield, Ross, and Morgan Township legislator. So I'm well aware, but we should be writing our senators. We should be writing the speaker. We should be writing the Senate president, and we should be writing all of our House members and letting them know that we either want or don't want. I mean, we need to verbalize all of it, our view on this veto. And I will tell you this, when people tell you that Columbus is fun, you should immediately, your radar ought to go up. Yeah. I have some good colleagues, but I would say to you, I serve this district and I'm home and I want to be home, and this is where I should remain. But vetoes, overriding vetoes, that, Everett, is fun. Yeah. That is fun.
I gotcha.
Because it creates an element of unity that we have not had, quite frankly, with the Blue 22 in our house this year. Yeah. And I enjoy the unity that overriding a veto and sticking together. There's a palpable excitement when we stand together. And that's what, as Republicans, we're best at.
Is this a right, left, Republican, Democrat thing, this particular issue?
Yeah, I would tell
voting results.
I would tell you, when you look at the HB 68 vote on the floor of the House, the vote was 62-27. 10 House members were missing, mostly Democrats, because they miss a lot. I think the Democrats miss a lot of votes more often. And I mean, I guess I don't blame them. They lose most of the time, or they should lose with a trifecta super red majority. However, you're being paid and you should show up to do your job. But so it was 62-27. We have 10 other people that should show up. One of them is a Republican. I should hope that he will vote yes. And then we're at 63. We need 60 votes to override the veto. And so let it be done.
Well, then, so people need to get active. They need to get so somebody says, I don't know how to do this. What if somebody's starting from scratch, but they want to do something, they're outraged. What do they do?
Go to ohiohouse.gov and it'll say, who is my legislator? You can type in your address or just your town or your zip code. It'll tell you who your rep is. And then once you find that out, I believe on that drop down menu, it will say contact or something like that. But if it doesn't, once you find out who it is, you can search their name in the Ohio House, find their information. You can find their website there, as well as the Senate. So ohiosenate.gov. And you can find that as well. The Senate President, Matt Huffman, has said he will move this and pass the veto if the House does it first. So I think leadership is in agreement there. And so that's what they need to do. And I mean, even regardless, Everett, I would like people to know if they're in my district, especially,
Yep.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a newsletter, by the way, and you can just type in Jennifer Gross Ohio House newsletter, and you can sign up for that as well.
Well, I did. I was a little late to the party, but I'm glad that I'm signed up. So, folks, please act. We can't set this one out. This Mike DeWine, it's not about Mike DeWine, but because he's the figurehead of this, this needs to be a slam down. This needs to be an enough is enough. Freedom needs to roar. The Lion of Judah needs to
Amen.
roar.
Amen.
Needs to roar over this one because it's just unconscionable. Jennifer, I love our state. I'm originally from Tennessee. Ohio's a great state. We are not going to be California. Hopefully California will be rescued, but we're not going to be California. This is Ohio. This is Ohio, the father's heart of it all.
Amen.
And sorry, I'm on a little bit of rant.
No, amen. I'm with you.
So here's my last question, okay? He's not going to be in that office forever. When are you going to run for governor?
I usually tell people when they ask me that, they must hate me. I want to serve you to the best of my ability right where I am. I'm up for re-election again. I just filed for my third term. I will go, honestly, where the Lord calls me to go. Yeah. But I believe that, part of my job is to raise up more people to run in my stead. And also I will be probably 3 times more effective behind the scenes as I'm learning to grow and train people in what I've learned in office. But I would say to you this, Everett, I will go where the Lord calls me, because being in the legislature has been the hardest job I've ever done. And I know that he called me to stand. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like an answer that we can trust and is very, very refreshing. Jennifer, I'm going to thank you very, very much for your time. I'm going to ask that you'd be open to coming back if something else comes up. And anytime you have something you feel like you want to say, please get in touch, and give my best to Megan. She was your assistant. She jumped on it. She's awesome. We appreciate that. Folks, let your voice be heard. Let your voice be heard. This cannot stand. I'd like to think that Mike DeWine represents an old, tired, out of date mode that needs to be put in the rearview mirror. And it's not even personal. It could be personal, but Jennifer, I want this. I have a never again mentality when it comes to this. Never again.
Yep.
Whew.
Well, we have a lot, Everett. We have a lot coming up, and I thank you for the invite. So just ask away, and I'll do my best to be there for you. I will always be there for you as your legislator, and let's get together.
It sounds like a plan. Jennifer, you have and enjoy the rest of your day and your week. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch. And folks, with that, we're going to say God bless you. God bless your family. God bless the state of Ohio and liberate us from this mess. And God bless the United States of America. Jennifer, thank you. We'll see everybody later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hear the sweet sound of freedom, and I won't be long.